Thank you so much for joining me today. Like, I know obviously we've worked together and I've
Yeah.
been on your marketing team for almost 3 years now. So technically I know your journey and story, but I wanted to like really get on here and kind of re-interview you, have you retell it and kind of dive in a little bit deeper because my goal with these spotlight interviews is to share like the ups, the downs, the good times, the tough times, the lessons, and really just the tips and tools that have helped you on your journey to building a thriving photography business and being now in the top 1% of photographers in our industry, creating, six figures or more from an income from doing something that you love. And I know your story is going to inspire and motivate tons of people. So, um, and just really let them know that, hey, I can build a thriving photography business too. So I'd love to have you just kind of introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, a little bit about your backstory to start.
Oh man. So yes, I'm Julie Socher. I'm located in the DC area. We're about 15 minutes outside of DC, Northern Virginia. Um, I've been a boudoir photographer for a little over 10 years now. Full time though, for about three years. That's probably when I started using your services. So, um, so my backstory though, I've always been a photographer, but I was always, had a 9 to 5, was working for the government. It's kind of the industry here in the DC area.
Mm-hmm.
And just was always looking forward to something creative to do on the weekends. And that's kind of when I picked up a camera again and started taking photos. I discovered boudoir and was just loving doing photo shoots on the weekends. I wasn't really thinking of doing it as a business. It kind of just turned into one. And then I think over the years, I had to really decide whether or not I wanted to, keep going and actually make money doing this, or just keep it as a hobby. And I think the turning point for me was when I moved into my first shared studio space and was making a little bit of profit and was like, holy crap, this is possible. I could totally do this.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until 3 years ago when I decided, well, I guess about 4 years ago when I decided to actually like do this full time, was when I discovered you and Damon. And that gave me the confidence to go full time. And having that marketing team and your coaching services to just really hone in on what I've been doing already gave me the confidence to just go all in.
Yeah. You said there was a turning point and that was when you just started making a little bit of profit and you were like, oh, this is possible.
Yeah.
And that's when you kind of decided did you love your government job? You didn't love your government job?
No, it wasn't. I think, everybody growing up, we're told that we're supposed to have, some type of career or job to retire in. And I think for me growing up, I felt like that was what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to, get this government job, and they call them the golden handcuffs because a lot of people hate their job, but they stay because the benefits are amazing.
Right.
But for me, it was, I didn't love it as much. I was, a graphic designer, which I did love doing design work, but I just couldn't stand sitting in a cubicle all day, working and feeling like I wasn't contributing or, doing something to make an impact somehow. And so that's what I think was the fuel for me to get my business off the ground. So
I love that. What contributed to you letting go of what you were supposed to do and pursuing doing photography full time?
it's a good question. I think it was a lot of tears.
Yeah. Well, I think this is a very relatable subject for people because there's what they think they should be doing, and then I think a lot of people get told like, get a real job. Photography is not a real job. You can't make money at photography. So this is like a really important, I think, subject that people can relate to, and they might be in that moment just like you were.
No, and that's exactly it. I think we're, especially, being in a government job where, everybody's there doing the same thing. And, I had some coworkers that I would tell them like what I was doing, and I think I'm going to do this full time. And, their reactions are all like, well, what about your benefits? What about retirement? What are you going to do about that? And I'm like, I could do the same thing. I'm just doing it on my own.
Right.
But I think the turning point was, realizing that I looked way much forward to going to work on the weekends than I did getting up Monday morning to go to my 9 to 5.
Yeah.
There were some times I woke up crying, and like my mental health was just like, I cannot, like, what excuse can I make to not go into work today? And all I was thinking about was like, the things that I could be doing in my business to build it rather than, working on it on the weekends. And then realizing that at a point I was actually making more money doing my 9 to 5, my side hustle, my photography, than I was actually making in my full-time job. So yeah. And then that was the real motivation, I think, for me when I, changed my pricing to work for what I needed it to work for me. Realizing that, oh my gosh, like this is totally possible to do this full time. Like why am I stalling right now? And it really is a mindset shift.
Okay. Yeah, I love that. Did you read any books, listen to any podcasts or anything that helped you with that mindset? Or
So I would say the one book that stands out the most, a friend of mine recommended, and it was called Quitter by John Acuff. I think I'm saying his name right. And he really helped me live with both my 9 to 5 and my side hustle to work in harmony before I was ready to actually take the plunge. Because some people, I think I'm not a huge risk taker now, which sounds kind of counterintuitive because I feel like entrepreneurship is just a gigantic, it's really all people do is take risks. But I like to take calculated risk. I'm a little bit more strategic, I think, and I tend to just think too much about what I'm going to do next or, the risks that I am taking. So instead of me just quitting my 9 to 5, just jumping off the bridge to do it, I wanted to make sure that I had that money in place, my safety nets and all of that in place before I did it. But what was really hard for me was just looking at my 9 to 5 as the support system for my dream job.
yeah.
And he really kind of explained in his book on how to live with the two so that because when you go into you're working for yourself, your boss becomes the bills you have to pay. Your boss becomes the food you have to put on the table. So I didn't want to have to book jobs that I didn't like. And then all of a sudden my dream job wasn't going to be my dream job anymore. So being able to take on the clients that I wanted to take on and being able to say no when I needed to, I think was what I really wanted, rather than just, hustling and bustling to do jobs just to put food on the table was not what I wanted. So that book Quitter, I think, was a big mindset change for me until I was ready to make that jump.
Yeah, I love that. And what was the period of time that you went and you did both jobs and were building your side hustle until you actually, because I think that's important, because great tip on the book, but I think people don't understand the underline of how much, I'm going to guess, how much work you put in, how many hours you put in, and what you sacrificed, and for what period of time for you. And it could be different for different people, but there's a journey and there's an effort, there's a sacrifice that goes into going from one to the other. Do you remember kind of like what that was like, or what the time period was?
So it's I guess if you're just looking for like a time period from when I made this switch, or I guess I would say about 6 or 7 years. There was a lot of sacrifice.
Yeah.
Yes. My time, working your 9 to 5 and then working on the weekends. So a lot of free time was spent building my business either on the weekends or in the evenings. Even there's times where I remember getting like 4 or 5 hours of sleep at that. So, but I would say from that point that I actually decided to make my business full time,
Mm-hmm.
it was probably 4 or 5 years, I would say, because that was, in the first 2 or 3 years, it was really just me as a hobby. I wasn't
Yeah.
really, it was just like, oh, this is fun to do. I don't know what I'm doing. This is fun.
Yeah.
But I would say 4 to 5 years was when I really decided to, put the work in to
Yeah.
understand business and marketing and like how all that is,
Yeah.
how it all goes together to run your business.
Yeah, I love that. And like for everybody watching, I mean, that sounds like a long time, but or at least to me, I'm like, oh gosh, that took this forever. But when it's something that you want to do and you love, it's worth it. But there is a journey, and I think it's really easy in today's world with social media to see people who are successful, and you feel like you're just struggling, and like, why am I not getting there? And it just takes time. There's a journey. And that's like, I want people to understand, like, just keep going. You
Mm-hmm.
can do this, but it does take time. It does take commitment. It does take sacrifice. But as long as you don't quit, you'll get there.
We're in a world of instant gratification. So I think, when you are in those Facebook groups with other boudoir photographers, I think a lot of people, what you're not seeing is that they've been at it for a while. Or even if they haven't been at it for a while and they are successful, they might have an amazing coach that's really helping them. So,
Mm-hmm.
because they figured it out way before, and they're helping other people get there faster. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of things, but the biggest thing is patience, and I think that's what a lot of us tend to not have. I don't have it,
I
so
don't either.
but I think when I started in boudoir photography, there wasn't a lot of resources, business wise, how to get your business off the ground and off and running. Now there's so much out there, that it's literally at your fingertips. But I think the challenge now is just finding
Right.
the right resource, or the
Mm-hmm.
right coach, or the right, marketing team, whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's what one of my next questions for you was, what's one thing you wish you had known or had when you began your photography business?
I think somebody just letting me know that photography is just 10% of what I'm going to be doing.
That's something we talk about a lot, right?
The photography is the fun part for sure, but yeah, the business side, I think that's the part us creatives need to learn more about. And if you don't know much about it, find somebody who's going to teach you it. Somebody's going to mentor you in it. Um, and you might have like a general idea of how it all goes, but it's the little things like how to respond to an inquiry
Yeah.
properly to get a response, or um, what type of work should be displayed on your website to get a good, to get inquiries in. It's just little things like that, things that you helped a lot with. And so I think if somebody told me early on to research more about the business side of it, I think, I probably would have just been like, whatever. I just want to do good photos. I just want to do good work, because good work is what brings me clients. And that's not true.
Yeah.
It's a little part of the truth, but you don't have to be, this award-winning, amazing photographer to have a successful business.
Oh, I love that. That's interesting. Tell me a little bit more about that.
I just think as photographers, I myself, am a creative. So I'm really I'm always, trying new techniques. And I think in the beginning, I got so much involved in like the right lighting or the right equipment I need to have really great work. And because at that point I kept saying, I just want my work to speak for itself, because that's what's going to bring me clients. No, it's not true. Because you can put all, I mean, your work can be, you know, if you have amazing work, of course. But I think as long as your work speaks to somebody that you're marketing to, that's, you know, that's really all that needs to happen. And then of course with that business mindset and knowing how to make them clients.
Yeah,
So.
that's a big thing that I think I got interviewed on a podcast and I talked about, she was like, so let's talk about this myth that once you become a business owner, you're no longer a photographer or creative. And I was like, well, don't hate me because it's kind of true. There's a truth to it because when you're a hobbyist and an artist, like you create for yourself, you create what makes you feel alive, what you love, what really inspires you. But when you become a business owner, that's when it shifts because no longer can you still do things you love? Yes. But in order to make money, you have to create something that a big enough market will pay for, that will support whatever monetary goals you have for that business. It's no different than you invent something, right? You invent something really cool that helps you and you want to like put it out there. But if there's not a market that's big enough that will pay for it where you can have profit, it's not viable. And so there is somewhat of a shift that happens. And I love that you kind of highlighted that because I think that's one of the biggest missing pieces for photographers, because most of us start because we love photography, we love creating. But then when we switch over to business, it's like, why isn't this working? Like, why
Yeah.
can't I just create what I want and people pay me for it? And it's just, there's a lot more psychology and business side that goes into it. And you have to find a market and you have to make sure the market's big enough. And sometimes it's just testing and seeing which editing style or things work. And I think quality makes you stand out for sure. Um, but definitely also getting a coach that can help you with those things, or, you know, a mentor or somebody that can help is good too. But I love that you highlighted that because I think that's an important topic for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you told me too once you know, once you have all of your flow, your workflow in order, it just starts to almost work on its own. So it
Mm-hmm.
gets to the point to where, you know, my shoot flow, my workflow for every client is so well oiled that it's not that I don't want to say that it's not challenging anymore, because it is. And that's what I love about doing this type of work is I love trying new things. But like I know what poses sell. I know what lighting a lot of women prefer for my work, you know, or what outfits that they're really going to love. So those are the things that I'm usually shooting for. I'm more shooting for them than I am myself. And that's where like the whole creating for myself kind of falls to the lower end of the bucket there. But that's why to do anything creative, I'm trying to take trips and book shoots at amazing, or not book shoots, but shoot for myself at amazing locations with some, you know, models or whatever, just to get that creative spark again, to kind of rejuvenate my creativeness. So
I love that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that when I do come back into the studio, I have this different perspective. And like, for instance, we went to New Mexico in March and got to play in the sand dunes, or white sands.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted to play with like some sheer fabrics.
Mm-hmm.
And so doing that, I was able to bring that back here into the studio. And you know, we have a fan blowing with the sheer fabrics, and it's just a really dreamy, and I just love the look of it. So
Yeah.
doing stuff like that just kind of re-energizes the creative juices to bring back here to the studio. So, which I think is really important.
I
So
think that's a great tip to avoid burnout and to understand that just because you have a business doesn't mean that you can't go off and do creative things and feed that creativity. And then sometimes that's going to come back and intertwine with business. So
totally, absolutely, yeah.
love that. What would you say are the three best resources that have helped you along the way, whether that's books, workshops, um, whatever?
All three, all
Yeah.
of those. um, I love podcasts. I listen to
Mhm.
I don't listen to them as much as I used to. You know, there's just people in the industry that I think are really good at helping you with your mindset, and just seeing things differently other than the way you think you're supposed. Because I definitely, I kind of put myself in a mold of how I'm supposed to be or how I'm supposed to
Mhm.
function, you know, in society or in, you know, the work field or whatever. But having, you know, listening to some people in podcasts or blogs or anything, to sort of help change that mindset to create the life that you want instead of having life happen to you. I think that's really important because I think for me, I was kind of, you know, stuck in that, you know, whole
Yeah.
letting life happen to me instead of creating the life that I wanted.
Mhm.
And then, of course, I would say the biggest game changer for me was when I discovered your services, um, helping me fine tune my process, converting my inquiries a lot better than I was before to give me that security to be booked out in advance, to quit my job.
Yay! I remember celebrating that day.
Yeah, I was actually just looking for because I think it's coming up in October. Is going to be 4 years? Is it going to be 4 years? Is it 3 years? 3 years?
Think I look back and I think it's 3 years in November.
Okay, maybe
Yeah.
it's like end of October, no, beginning of November, I
Yeah.
think.
But
But
maybe I
yeah,
have the date wrong.
yeah. But yeah, it's, I think just having a mentor or somebody that you can bounce ideas off of or just ask questions to, because there's going to be lots of times in business where you're not going to know maybe how to respond to a client or how to handle a certain situation. Because when you're in this entrepreneurship in general, is just a lonely thing to do. So
Right.
you don't have coworkers to ask questions with, and so just having that person that you can bounce ideas off of. um, I would say books, but unless it's an audio book, I don't read it because my attention span is horrible. So just sitting down and actually reading a book is hard to do. But the book by Elizabeth Gilbert, Big Magic, I think it's
Okay.
called, it's one of my favorites, and it talks about how to deal with fear. So
Love that.
yeah, because there's a lot of fear, of course, when you're
Yeah.
switching
I think
careers. So.
always when you're taking risks and going against the norm for sure. On that subject, like quick question, what would you say was your biggest support system? Like, was it a person? Was it a group? Was it like, because I think too, there's going to be lots of people who can relate to maybe they're trying to build a business, but their spouse really isn't an entrepreneur and they're like a traditional person, or maybe they're single and they're trying to, and maybe even they're a single mother and they're trying to build a business, or their friends and family just aren't really that supportive. Who was kind of like, or where did you find support when you were trying to make that transition and make those decisions?
I would say it was, I had a lot of, I'm proud to say that we, in the Northern Virginia area, the boudoir photographers here, we're all pretty tight together. We have our own little Facebook group where we get together. We try, well, you know, before COVID, we tried to get together for little happy hours and
Mm-hmm.
being able to talk shop with them. And we all were pretty supportive with each other's businesses, which I think is kind of unheard of when you're all in the same area competing for the same business. But having that, I guess, support from my local peers, my local boudoir photographers, was really helpful. Um, I would say when I first started, photography groups on Facebook helped. Now that I guess I'm in a season now where I don't really go into them because it clouds my mind.
Yeah.
But I will honestly say it was your group. Being a part of your program has really helped me because and what I also love about your group is that it's not gigantic. There aren't like thousands of photographers that I have to, you know, I don't want to say compete attention for, but like if I have a question, like you're open and you're available to chat, when I have questions or any concerns with my business. And we also have a great little group of photographers of a lot of different genres that are all really helpful and getting that feedback or help that I need too. So I think that has been, I wouldn't say since I started with your group,
Okay.
that has been the biggest help. I also have my husband who's he's my cheerleader. He's been really awesome at helping me with anything I need with the business. So,
Yeah.
but I can't talk shop with him or I can't talk business with him because he doesn't understand. But, if I need some help in the studio, he's here. So,
Yeah. So finding like-minded, either mentor who can understand or like-minded people who are kind of on that same journey.
Right. Exactly. I think the worst thing you can do, like, I've never gotten any negative feedback or anything from other family members or anything, but they're not usually going to understand your journey or the things that you're facing or going through when it comes to your business. So I tend to not ask them for help, or, if they ask about, how the business is doing and things like that, like I don't mind talking about it, but I don't think they truly understand and, until they've gone through their own business struggles or, anything like that. So I try not to ask their help or opinion on things because they're usually going to tell me the opposite of what I need to hear.
Just because the timing of this interview, I think it will be really relatable. How has COVID affected your business, and what have you done to compensate, stay alive, to keep thriving? Like, what were the biggest tools for you?
COVID. So it's funny because so we shut down probably at the end of March and got back to shooting at the beginning of June. And so we were down about 2.5 months, I guess. What got me through it financially was a lot of savings. So I think having I had about 23 months of savings that I knew was gonna, help me stay, I guess, be okay with, the security of money. Because that's always a concern, when things like this happen is, do I have money to pay bills and things like that? And it's crazy because money was never, before I started my business, it was never really something I really paid attention to. I was just looking forward to getting a paycheck every couple of weeks and that was it. But now having that nest egg to, I guess, fall back on if anything like COVID happens, I'm financially okay. The business though, I'm booked out to next year. So what's really crazy is, there's almost this like guilt that you feel because there's other businesses out there that are really hurting. And it almost makes me feel strange in a way where mine is doing so well that there's this how there's just I just don't, sometimes it's hard to wrap my mind around. But I'm just super grateful that it's doing as well as it is, and I'm on track to kill my last year's revenue. So
Even with 2.5 months off.
even with 2.5 months off. And yeah, and I think that's what that has taught me is that I don't need to be booked solid for 12 months. If I want to take a month off, I can, and I'll be okay. But yeah, so I think I think I answered your question.
Well, I think it's great too. And this has come up actually a lot in our group. I've heard it from a couple of people. They feel guilty that they're actually thriving and they don't want to tell anybody that they're thriving because so many people are suffering or hurting. But like for me, my best advice was no, you need to shine. You need to tell people because they need to know there's hope. They need to know that it's possible to get through tough times, and there's a way where they don't necessarily have to be in the situation that they are. And I think you touched on it, being financially responsible. Like when you start making those profits, you don't just go out and spend them on fun stuff. And that's part of the sacrifice where you get to go from where you get to start thriving, I think, is when you take those sacrifices, and even when it's not fun, you put back the money for, I mean, you did an extreme. I think previously it was suggested to do 3 months of personal and business expenses are put back so that you could survive. I would say now it seems like 6 months seems to be should be the rule of thumb. So having 6 months worth of personal savings and business savings that cover all the expenses if you couldn't work for 6 months. Um, and I think that's one of the things that made it probably easier for you. Um, I would imagine consistency in how would you, what would you say was the consistency in being able to still get clients in?
The consistency, well, I would say that 2.5 months, I was getting maybe, I don't think I got any inquiries, maybe one inquiry, one or two.
Yeah.
And of course, I think anybody would kind of panic because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm not even getting inquiries. Like, what's going
Mm-hmm.
on? But you also have to kind of remind yourself we're in the middle of the pandemic. Nobody's really looking for photography at this point. So, but the biggest thing that made me feel comfortable and okay about it was the fact that I did have a savings
Savings.
set up, and I didn't, it was almost like this sounds it sounds terrible saying, but it was kind of like a little vacation for me
Yeah.
because I was able to just relax and actually just
Forced breather.
force a forced time to take off. um Super grateful though that nobody in my family got sick, or
Yeah.
everybody's healthy.
Yeah.
But it was definitely one of those times where I normally would have panicked.
Mm-hmm.
But having the financial um, savings and all of that stuff to help me feel safe was what I
Yeah.
needed. So all those years of me saying like I need that nest egg to quit my full, like, it paid off.
I love
So
it. I love it. Um, Trying to keep these right around 20 minutes. So I'm just going to ask my last question because I know we could talk all day long.
oh, for sure.
Lots of great topics, but let's just wrap up with what's one piece of advice you would give other photographers who are just starting out or currently building their photography business?
Patience.
Yeah.
Really have the patience to, grow. It doesn't happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
It might look like it does,
Mm-hmm.
but that's just because of all the resources that are out there right now where photographers have figured it out and they're teaching what they learned over the years to help others. But I think it just really takes patience. Patience and growing your business, it's going to ebb and flow. So try not to freak out in the slow times. It's easy to freak out. Um, if anything, just refine your workflow on, what happens with, when you first meet a client. So what happens on the end. Um, and really just, so of course the business part, just dive in on learning the business aspect of, how to run your business. And I think just, it's really just the patience. I think that's key. Because growing your business, like I mentioned too, it's gonna have its ups and downs. But I think if you just keep going and keep going forward with what you're wanting to do, um, I think that's really just the biggest key. And there's lots of resources out there. Get yourself a mentor, get yourself a coach, because a game changer for me for sure. I
Yeah.
think we all think we can do it all on our own. I sometimes tell myself I'm a lone wolf in this whole industry where I just feel like I kind of just do my own thing.
Mhm.
But having that person to, ask questions or advice is really important because it is a very lonely industry, or a lonely job where you're the only one doing your thing. And so having that mentor or coach is really helpful.
I love that. And I did say that was the last question. One more thing though, because I think you're right. It ebbs and flows, and there's times when it's like tough. And you mentioned earlier that you listened to a couple podcasts or other people in the industry that talk about mindset. And I'm totally fine with you name dropping if you have specific ones, because I think anything that people can like grab onto. I know watching this, I was like, wait, are you going to tell us who you listen to or what do
So
you have any?
yeah, I don't have like a
Okay.
favorite one. I kind of just listen, like if there's something that I need to listen to at a certain point in time, and I know a certain person is going to deliver on that, I'll kind of pop open. But I
Okay.
do love impact theory like you do.
Yep. And
Um,
love back there.
yeah, I love listening to, because he goes over a lot of different topics, which I think, and
Mhm.
mindset I think is a big one that he talks about, and he interviews a lot of different other people that are experts in their fields. I also really love, back in the day, I think when I was first starting, I listened, or I don't know if it was years ago, a couple years ago, maybe Gold Digger was one.
Okay.
And that just kind of helped with, that was more like, just women in business and how to get processes in place and things like that. And I think that one too is also like a little bit of a mindset shift.
Mhm.
Um, which ones do I listen to a lot now? Man, there's a bunch of different, and they're all over
Yeah.
the place. So
Yeah.
if I think of any more, I'll
Yeah.
I'll name drop
Well,
them.
yeah. Sometimes when you're just starting out, I think that maybe you don't have the funds yet to get a mentor, but you can still go and like YouTube is a great place, or
Oh
podcasts are a
yeah,
great place to go and really get inspired and get motivated. And I believe, and I'm pretty sure you believe, that investing in your business, investing in mentorship, and investing in those things will turn, it will return big time. Like it will be a great return on investment, if you
mm-hmm.
will. But I also understand that if you're just getting started out and you're still building up that capital to invest into your business, that there's still resources out there. And I think that, having the support system, but also having those tools. So
Mm-hmm.
podcasts, YouTube, go
Yeah.
out there, watch as much as you can. But I love that. Yeah, love impact theory.
Yeah, and I know, I just thought of one because I know
Okay.
he's not for everybody, but I know Gary V, he's just really good at being in your face about what he really wants to tell you
Yeah.
or what he really thinks. And sometimes I think, like for me, sometimes I just need somebody to just, tell me how it is. And he talks a lot about fear and like what other, like not caring about what other people think.
Yeah.
And I think with social media and all of that too, because your posts and your, social media is very curated.
Yeah.
Some people are just afraid to put themselves out there in fear of what everybody else thinks about them.
Yeah.
But he's a good one for, I think, just being in your face. And he's a good one who talks a lot about patience as well. So
He's just a no BS, no excuses. And
yeah.
I think that a lot of people skirt around that. And for him to be that direct, it's just like, no, this is the way it is. So,
Yeah. 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 So, and I think sometimes I just need to hear that because I'm very much a person who, like, I'd rather hear the bad news and not sugarcoat it than somebody just kind of, sugarcoating their way and telling me like how it should be. You know what I mean?
right.
So sometimes I just need to hear that.
Love it.
Oh, Dave Ramsey is actually a podcast that I like to listen to. He talks about money stuff. So
Yeah.
so sometimes on my way home I'll listen to a little bit of Dave Ramsey.
Yeah. Love that. Money, getting your money right.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it. And I know that was great content that we covered today. And
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I feel super honored to be here. So
Perfect. Thank you so much.
awesome. Thanks, La.